All right, guys. On the podcast today, we have Sandy Brown, who, if you don't know yet, is one of the best cooks in the world. I'm going to say the world because the other world people are not competing. So we are the only ones. That's a world champion. I'm going to say it. So Sandy, thanks so much for coming on and hanging out with us today. How you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I followed your progress all of 2020, which you became the points chase champion.
Yeah.
What brought you into the world of steak cook-offs?
I actually started, my husband and I started with the KCBS barbecue. We were doing the barbecue side and having okay luck with it. And we're under Stress Relief Barbecue. And on Friday nights at some of the comps we've been at, they had the SCA steak contest. And I'm like, all right, I like the steak. I might as well try it. First couple of times I did decent. My husband and I were both lucky enough to get our golden tickets, our first years competing. And that was actually in 2018. And then 2019 season came, we decided we were going to do about 10 to 12 KCBS events, 10 to 12 SCA events. We did 3 KCBS events and 57 or so SCA events. And then so for the 2020 season, we didn't even fool ourselves. We said, we're not even going to do any KCBS. We're going to do all SCA. And that's how we got started and loving it.
Awesome.
That's exactly what I did. Kidding. There was none around. There wasn't even an option to do a KCBS.
That's right. We weren't as lucky as you guys in the Midwest, right?
Well, we're in Northern Illinois and we have some great KCBS, but really didn't have a whole lot of SCA events. And so when we started doing SCA events, there were a couple in the area and, that's why that first year, I think we did 4. Second year, we're like, okay, we'll travel about 8-hour radius to comps. Well, then we started doing well and kind of getting hooked on it. Well, we started traveling outside our circle of 8 hours. I think last year we cooked in 16 different states. And in the 2020 season, when I knew I was going to go chasing for points, I think the furthest we drove was about 16 hours because there wasn't a whole lot of events in Illinois and Wisconsin close by. So we had to travel far.
Cool.
One thing real quick, Sandy, can you move this out of it's on the zipper, so when you move it goes.
You have like a clip or something, you can do that, like a paper clip. Let's see.
The paper clip. Do you have a paper clip? Because that would be trippy. I don't even know if I have one in the whole house.
I do have a paper clip. I could tell you we have paper clips because we just bought paper clips at the grocery store last Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Oh, snap.
Now, do I think I know where they are?
No.
Sorry.
It's just hitting on the zipper is all.
Yeah, we're just Rusty's getting really picky. He's yelling at me for my audio now.
Hey, I want us all to sound great,
Yeah, we got to sound great. It's the whole point of a podcast, right?
Not necessarily.
Can you hear this?
Like Sandy.
Is this getting better?
That's
way
perfect.
better.
Okay.
Just be cognizant of it. If you like, maybe I'll give you a hand so it'll go do this.
Okay.
One more question, Rusty. Can you hear me killing the mic?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll leave it alone.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go back in 3, 2, and then I'll ask the next question. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you started out in steaks, and how did that transition go? So you went from barbecue to SCA. Do you still do barbecue, or is it just something you kind of left behind? And is it something you see yourself doing it again?
For competition, we left it behind. We still do it at home on occasion. We'll make a brisket or a pork butt. I think eventually we'll come back to it, but not at the level that we're doing SCA. I think really the SCA is really now where kind of my heart and passion and focus is at. So I really see that happening more and growing, and really like to see the sport grow. So I intend to kind of stay in it longer. We do have an event that's a KCBS event that's 10 miles from our house. So probably show up at that one every now and then.
Yeah, I see a lot more people doing that, kind of moving away from the KCBS thing because it's obviously much easier to do a state competition, but it also seems to be just a little bit more social and fun.
Yes, definitely. Being able to hang out with the judges, the reps, the promoters, the other cooks. It's definitely SCA family. Now there's barbecue family and they're great as well. But the SCA family, I think it's more social. I think it's because it's a smaller time frame. It's typically a day event, less prep. I think when you get to a barbecue event, it's longer and more intense, and you don't have as much time to socialize. I know that was the case for me with SCA. I think it's a little bit easier to build those bonds.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also you can be more
So
creative
you won
too. You can be more creative
Yes.
at the SCAs as well. So that's what I like
It's
about it.
definitely with the ancillaries, yes.
Do you do ancillaries at all?
I've done them once or twice. I've decided I'm not that great at them. And one of our first attempts we did it in Australia when we were in Australia last year for meat stock, which didn't happen. It was called sheep stock instead. And we cooked actually with Matt Overson. My husband and I decided to do ancillaries. The Australians take their ancillaries extremely seriously and very creative, and that's not us. And that was not doing ancillaries anymore. I'll stick to steak.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm kind of over the ancillary bit. I love to cook. It's my favorite thing to do, but I love the SCAs for the social aspect, and ancillaries just seem to kind of get in the way.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, but they're fun to have done them. It's like everything in life, it's like fun to have done it, but not to do it,
Exactly. I've done it. I would like to judge it. Now, if they came up with like breakfast categories, I make really good chorizo burritos for breakfast. Like that I might do. But
that is so funny because I was thinking that just today. I'm like, they need a breakfast category.
Well, they
and ancillaries.
Well, they have a
breakfast
sausage.
ancillary.
They have a sausage category that qualifies.
Yeah. But what I suggested they do, I think would be fun, is you only can buy all your ingredients from a gas station. So you have to show a receipt of all the things you use.
Oh, that'd be
only stuff purchased from a gas station.
You have to tape it to your box. Proof.
Yeah, something like that. That'd be cool. Like you have to do it.
I think there's a couple of competitors, or there's one competitor I know in Wisconsin that has done that actually. So.
Probably last minute, like, oh crap, I need to go get a burrito from 7-Eleven.
He gets the deviled egg or the deviled eggs that are already peeled and in a little water.
Hey, there's a lot of cool stuff there. I mean, you'd be surprised, especially if you get into a nice place with a good, they have like a Maverick here that has basically it's a mini grocery store, so it'd be pretty cool.
Take the sheets of jerky and roll it in with something.
Yeah. Let's go back to the 2020. You won the points chase, followed up by your husband, Tim.
Correct. It was.
Tell me about that race. How was that for you and him?
It was long. It was a long season. It was exciting. We kind of came up with the hashtag Browns 1-2. That was kind of our goal, was to finish 1-2, and it was long. It was, like I said, it was a lot of fun. And we did it together. I was glad, I had a partner, and we worked it together, and he just kept saying he just wanted to see Browns 1-2 just once. And I kept saying, fine, but it's just going to be at the end of the season. And really that's what happened. I was fortunate enough. I was the only cook that was in the top 10 the entire season. So from the very opening kickoff classic, I placed, so I was in the top 10, and I was in the top 10 for the whole season. And Tim was kind of back and forth. And at the very end, he had I think he placed 13 out of 18 cooks in the top 10 that last month and a half. So it brought him to number 2. So it was exciting.
So, cooking as many as you have, which is a lot of state cooks, and taking as many top 10s or first places as you've taken, that took a lot of work to get there, but they've just changed the rules now. Tell us the new point system and how do you think it's going to affect your season?
Yeah, so they made some changes. I'll kind of reflect a little bit first back on 2020,
sure.
Because it was truly points, and And in December, a lot of comps got added on and triples. And there was a group of us that were really chasing hard for the points. And not everybody can do it. To be honest with you, my husband and I, and really the rest of the top 10, we cooked every weekend from the beginning of May to December 31st. We cooked every single weekend. And not everybody can do that. Now, we're fortunate that we have jobs that allow us, to do it. And so for the 2021 season, they made some changes to the points chase to make it a little bit more people can be involved in it that have the opportunity. So it is based off of your top 15 scores. So you might compete only 15 times. And if you, place first 15 times, that's awesome, right? You could get up there. But if you cook 30 times or let's say 16 times, they're only going to take your top 15 points places. So the more you cook, it will kind of weed out some of your lower ones. And if you look historically, most of the people who are in the top 10 cook at about 50% of the time they'll hit the top 10. So I think it's going to change it. You'll see a lot of different names on it, and a lot of different areas that don't have a lot of comps. Definitely the Northwest area, and kind of even down to Utah, California, that whole West Coast, there's a lot of comps that are coming, but you guys can't do 107 comps like we did. But if you get to 15, 20 comps, you guys have a really good chance of breaking into that top 10. So I think we're going to see different names in different areas. I still think you're going to have people that are going to compete every weekend just to get those best top 15 scores in there.
And it's cool because for the New Year's Eve, they, have a whole thing on SCA, and Brett does this.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thing. And then he kind of broke it down how it would look like if they did do the 15 people. And Jerry Aguilar, actually out of California, who had a real rough start, but then just came on hot, would have been second place. So, it's very possible, which I think is cool because, like you said, we don't get a lot. So it's like we have to take what we can get, or do like you did, say you drove that 16 hours. That's very common for us. Like, I'm going to Bakersfield, that's a 10-hour drive. So it's nice because, and the more that pop up here, we're able to compete with, and, you're not like right in the middle of it. North Illinois is a long way from a lot of things.
Yes.
So,
it's kind of in the Midwest. We have to travel far for everywhere. I'm originally from New Jersey. So I'm a Jersey girl. And we're seeing a lot more on the East Coast, and there's some great cooks out there in the West Coast. And I'm really excited for the 2021 season. I mean, it's kicked off already, but to see so many new names and different areas being represented, it's kind of cool. It's not just Texas anymore, down south, Louisiana, kind of in there. Matt last year was from Iowa. I'm from Illinois. Kind of Midwest has done some well.
Yeah. So you're from New Jersey. So Sopranos, the best show, or the best show? Which one?
It's a pretty good show.
It's the best show. Let's just get that over with. That is that's just kind of saying the Beatles, are they the best band? Yes, they are. We just looked at number 2.
You just bypassed it all right there, huh, Rusty? Just straight to the top.
We were rewatching it. It's fabulous.
Oh, all right.
It makes me want to go to New Jersey. I don't know why. I want to go to New Jersey now.
I got that.
New Jersey, cool. Is it fun? Should I go, Sandy? Is New Jersey like a destination place, or is it just kind of?
I think it's a great place. I think it's a fun place to go. There's a lot to do. Most people think of it's like really ugly because all they know is Newark Airport, but there's some pretty parts. We have the ocean and the shore and great restaurants. So on my license plate actually still says Jersey on it. So nice. I say this Jersey girl from the Midwest cooks on an M grill from Texas.
There you go.
There it is. Yeah.
I'm a Yankee.
Man, Sandy, did you know, Rusty, you just got done saying that the West Coast doesn't have a whole lot of competitions. Rusty decided to judge one and sit the first one out. So he wanted to miss an opportunity for those 15 cooks. What do you think about that? What do you think about stopping and judging before you actually really go full blown into the sport?
I highly recommend it. I highly recommend taking a judging class. We did that. I will say I actually have not cooked an actual, haven't judged an actual competition. Was kind of hard last year. We couldn't give up a single comp. This year I plan on judging, but just even taking that judging class helps you understand that process and then what the judges are looking for. And we've had a lot of discussions on, appearance and, they don't see the whole steak and how quick. You only have about 10 seconds. So I highly recommend anybody who wants to compete and compete seriously to take a judging class. And then if they have the opportunity to judge. Because I think that will reinforce, or even if you could just observe, sometimes there's too many judges and there's always volunteers that are needed just to see kind of behind the scenes. It will definitely open your eyes.
Yeah, it is actually shocking. So, when I was KCBS, I've cooked a lot of SCAs, but when I cooked KCBS, I did 4 competitions that I judged before I even set foot in the sport, which was huge for me. So doing the SCAs and coming back and judging for the first time after seeing it and not really seeing how how it goes on in the judging table, it was really eye-opening to see that kind of stuff. It shows you a lot of things that you're doing wrong and you need to improve on. And so I would like to double that and say absolutely judge, because there's a lot of things that's going on back there that you may not realize. And when you're back there, talk to the other judges. Like I was sitting there and turning, so, okay, I thought that was great. What did you think? He's like, it wasn't this. And we'd explain why. And it's really interesting. So definitely suggest doing that.
Absolutely.
So one thing, and we can jump to this real quick, because when I was back there judging, you try real hard to take that knife and you try and cut the best piece of the spinalis you can. Judges aren't automatically just going, I'm taking what's given to me. They will, try and get, out of the gristle. They'll try and get all that stuff. But I was seeing a lot of silver skin tucked into that spinalis. Have you ever tried to do away with that? Or do you have any tips or tricks for that? Or is that just something people have to deal with and hope that no one gets it?
On the outside, I try to trim as much of the silver skin as possible. Now the steaks that I choose tends to be like the tri heart. So it has the bigger spinalis and that tri piece. So the fat is kind of square rectangle. So you have to be careful with that. I use a tenderizer marinade, and that helps pull that away a little bit when you're cutting. And similar to what you just said, the judges try really hard to cut around the gristle. They don't want to eat that. So if they're looking at it and they're cutting their bite-sized piece, they're going to try to cut the best piece possible. They don't want to eat gristle or silver skin if possible. So you have to let a little bit to the judges and hope that they give you a good bite. But it's the trimming of the outside, as much silver skin as you could see. You trim off, and then kind of that fat pocket usually hits it with the tenderizer, helps with that. Yeah,
that makes sense, especially if you hit that right there, because I had a couple pieces where I was too late. I was in it, and I'm like, I guess this is my bite. There's not much I could do it at that point. But I think if you were to like you said, especially jacquard probably right there might help eat that, like break that up.
Yeah.
I know in the restaurant business, when we did ribs and stuff, we'd cut the membrane. We'd just give it a good, slice. We wouldn't take it off. It would just be an X, and that would help break it up. So that's probably a good tip to do. I need to try that.
All right. Let's talk about steak selection just a little bit right there. You just got done saying that you tend to lean a little bit towards the tri-hearts, but obviously each cook has their preference on which way they go. But what happens if you go up to a table and the cuts aren't great? How do you adjust for that? Like I've seen that some of the steaks aren't cut straight, or they're just already falling apart. They're warmer than expected. How do you make adjustments for something like that?
With the steaks not cut straight, prior to going up to the table, I'm already kind of eyeing, are they level? Aren't they level? Try to pick the steak that's the most even cut. And if the steaks are warmer and falling apart, I might put it in the cooler to cool off a little bit while I'm trimming. Typically when I'm cooking my steak, I want it on the room temperature wise before it goes on the grill. But when I'm trimming it, I like my steak cool, so it makes it easier to cut. I have never cut, like trimmed my steak, like if it was uneven, you know, and I do carry my brisket knife with me. I've never kind of trimmed it. I've just always trimmed the steak and then just using pins and even tying it, trying to get the shape that I want and even it out, jacaring it down a little bit more if it is a little bit thicker at one end. Typically, you know, it's the fat that's sticking up, so I might shave some of the fat off.
Cool. And then just one other question, because you did bring up the pins. Can you tell us a little bit about pin management? At this last competition, we had a couple people that actually left their pins in. How do you manage your pins? I actually pinned for my first time ever. And when they said that there's a DQ because pins were left in, I started panicking. I was like, I did not manage it. I did not count how many I had. Like, how do you manage that?
I pin and I typically only use 3 pins. That's typically what I do. And if I have to do a little bit more, really try to make an effort to count them. And then and this is with everything in the steak, there's a process I have and I follow it every time. So there's consistency. I always say, people, you're going to DQ. It's going to happen. And typically when you DQ was something happened and you took a misstep. You know, I keep my scissors in the box. So when I go to put my steak in the box, the scissors are in there. So I can't leave my string in. I take my pins out at a certain time all the time. And I leave my string and my pins on my tray. So when I go to turn in and I come back and I hear someone got a DQ because they left their string in or they left their pins, and I could go to my tray and go, oh, my string's here, my pin's there. It's not me. I can relax for a little bit. But if you use, I try to be, like I said, try to be consistent in the number of pins. Sometimes some steaks need more, some need less. Write it down. I did see, I won't take credit for it, I did see another competitor write the number of pins that they used on their door of their trailer. So they would see it kind of like when they're going in and out of their trailer. So they knew exactly how many pins they had.
That's interesting. I think another thing would be, I'm just thinking about this, but you know how they have those little test tube kits?
Mm-hmm.
You know, get one and then make however many you have. And then when you're done, put it in the test tube kit. If there's 5 little test tubes, then, you have it all.
Right.
There you go, Rusty. That's
See,
genius.
I'm innovative.
You should patent that design and sell it. Just put SCA logo on it.
If Mike Steele's listening, I will do a class on that. Barbecue champ class.
Pins and test tubes.
Yep, that's right. That's how you do it. Thank you. You're welcome, everybody. So when it comes to like steak, this is going to be what makes a bad steak, period. And I'm not saying what the doneness is, not the obvious stuff, not the tenderness. What are things that make steak bad besides the 4 things the judges judge? For example, like what is something that you know that steak will be bad because you didn't do what?
I burnt my butter.
Burnt your butter. So explain that, because there's different stages of butter. What do you mean by burnt butter?
So I use clarified butter. I clarify it and have it in a cast iron little pot, and it's warming up on my grill. And I use an M16, and I warm it right before my steaks go on. And sometimes I forget that the butter's on, and I'm talking to somebody or getting my playlist ready or something, and the butter starts to bubble and brown and it gets bitter.
Did you say playlist? Like, do you put like the Rocky theme on? And is that what
I do. I don't put Rocky on, but I do a particular playlist.
Bruce Springsteen, is that on there?
Hey, there you go. New Jersey. Hey, you have to understand, Sandy, something here, rule in this house. Okay. You don't talk bad about Bruce Springsteen. He's the boss. And no one talks crap on Bruce. So I'm sure you can agree with that.
He's good. But you know what? He wasn't on my playlist.
Oh
yeah. He has to be on your playlist.
He might have to make an appearance on my playlist.
He has to be. Like, you're from New Jersey. That's like me not knowing what Footloose is, you know?
Then I got to throw like Bon Jovi on there too.
You know, we don't have to, you know, like Bon Jovi, but Bruce, man, you gotta put the boss on there. Come on.
Is Wu-Tang on there?
No.
But
Dang it.
I will say my kickoff song, and those of people who have cooked around me actually know and had backup dance joke around. It's the "Man, I Feel Like a Woman" by Shania Twain. So, and my previous grill name was Shania. So
nice.
that was the beginning of my playlist.
I love the playlist thing. That's amazing. That's what I do. And
You have to.
you do, absolutely, or you shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
So the bad steak, the butter. So if it goes bad, do you have backups? How do you adjust that? Or is there anything that you can do to substitute butter when it goes bad? It's over, right? Because you can't, there's nothing you can do.
I have backups. I have backups of everything. We have 2 to 3 of everything. And if for some reason my backup also went bad, there's a competitor next to me, SCA family, whether it's my husband or it's Mark Huntley or Matt Overson, Jeff Jacobson, all of us kind of cook together. It's like, hey, I need butter. I just burnt it or something. Everybody's willing to help out and give you extras. So if you ever forget anything at a comp, ask your neighbor. More than likely they have it. If they don't have it, the neighbor next to them has it.
And you got to watch butter, because you go from clarified, it's nice and creamy and it's got a good buttery texture, to a blondish, to a brown,
Yes.
to done. And even those changes can affect your cook, even if it's not burnt all the way. Maybe it just gets to the, you know, really nutty flavor that you're not, you know. So exactly. I like the nutty flavor, and that's usually what you're going for, but some people don't. So well, be very careful about the stages of butter, cooked butter.
Yes. I mean, I like the nutty flavor, but not on a steak.
Yeah. And see, you have to watch that, because even if you're not burning it and it gets a little dark, then you got that nutty flavor and there's not much you can do about it, you know? So clarified butter helps, because it's harder to get to those stages, but you know, it's something you have to be very cognizant of. So when it comes to like flavor, let's talk about flavor profiles, because a lot of people I talk to have flavor profile problems. What do you think is a good, like, what are you looking for in a flavor when you came up with your profile? What is good to you?
Well, I'm not judging the steak, so I'm actually thinking about the 5 judges and what's going to be good for them. And I think of it in the 5 judges, and I want something that's balanced, because not all 5 judges have the same taste palettes. So I want something that is balanced and really lets the beef flavor come through. They want to taste steak. I don't want to taste seasoning, you know, type of thing. For me, you know, if I was making a steak at home, it's probably a little salt, pepper, a little garlic, and that's about it. You know, again, I want that beef flavor to come out. But you want to make sure that it's not just beef. You want things that will enhance that flavor, but again, balanced. I don't want anything too sweet. I don't want anything too spicy. You know, I love garlic. Not everybody does. I love butter on my steak. Not everybody does. So it's finding that balance in your flavor profile and being consistent in it.
So how do you find that balance for like just the time? Because there's a 30-minute window, right? Some people start turning in right at that start of the window, and then there's people that will come in on the later. Usually the people that turn in later, they have more of a risk of catching a blowing out palates. People put in too much salt, too much pepper before them. How do you, I guess, integrate that into your turn in?
Yeah. When I started cooking, the SCA, it was my husband and I, and we were cooking on the same grill. With SCA, that's one of the benefits that they have, is 2 competitors can cook on the same grill, but you can't cook at the same time. So my husband cooked at the beginning of the window, and he was, you know, turn in 1, 2. I liked the end, so I was typically one of those last minute cooks. So you had to be careful on what it was. I will say I probably went same flavor profile, but a little heavier handed if I'm going to cook at the end. I'm not changing my profile, but I'm probably doing a little bit heavier, just making sure that taste would come out. I've been known that I am the last person to turn in. I've been known that the reps come outside looking, and I'm like, I'm on my way. But on occasion, I'll mix it up and I'll turn in earlier in the window. And I've, people have won at the beginning of the window, middle of the window, end of the window. A good steak will come through no matter where you turn in.
Rusty, with being your first time in the judging seat, did you feel like your palate was kind of blowing out towards the end out of all the steaks you had, or were you able to pick up flavors throughout the whole thing?
I felt like I could do it. There was 7 teams, and we had, I want to say 4 tables. Forgive me. We were there were people behind us behind a wall, so I wasn't sure how many tables exactly, but we were getting a good rotation of steak. So, and it wasn't a lot. I mean, we had a good amount, but I don't feel like there was anything that would really blow it out of the water. There was a minute there where it was kind of hectic, but that was it. And I feel like at the very beginning, it was the same as it was at the very end, which I thought, which is another one of those things I was surprised by. I felt like at the end, I was calmed down. I kind of knew I had water, I had the crackers, I was waiting. So I'm eating crackers. So I'm kind of resetting my palate. So I didn't really feel like there was a difference.
Right. I mean, if you're at an event and there's 40 cooks, and I always ask during cooks meeting, how many judges do we have? How many judges tables are they going to seat? And there might be some concern if it's, let's say 40 competitors and they only have 2 tables, so that's 20 bites. And then let's say it's a double that day, and those same judges are going to cook both A and B, or judge A and B. By the time B comes around, they're going to be tired of steak. So you want to make sure you give them a good pop if you're waiting at that end. But for the most part, they try to balance the number of tables, the number of cooks. So the judges really are getting 10 to 15 bites per session.
That's an excellent point. That would have been totally different if that was the case, I think, because then, there's only so much steak you can eat. And so especially if you did ancillary, like you said, if they're short, they're probably doing ancillaries too. They probably had dessert, who knows what it is, and they're just wiped. So, there's always so much you can take before your mouth just goes, I don't want to taste anything anymore. That said, have you ever kind of peeked at the judges, because in KCBS, there's this thing, go look at the judges and you can kind of tell the profiles they're looking for by different things, but in steak, it seems like a lot of people will go up and look at what kind of tent they're under. Is that something you do?
Yeah, I go look. Like I said, at judges meeting, I always ask how many judges, how many tables, how many certified judges, where are they judging? A lot of times steak selections, same place where they're judging. I always want happy judges. I want them in air conditioning if it's really hot. If it's freezing cold and you're cooking on a lake and it's like minus 17 degrees, I want my judges to be warm and toasty. Happy judges make it easier for what they like to eat. But I do look at those things. With the SCA, you could become friends with judges. It's not such a division. So you'll see the judges walk around before a comp. You'll see them stay afterwards for awards. So we've become friends with a lot of judges. In Iowa, where we cook a lot, there's some great prime judges. I always say we have some of the best judges around. So I don't necessarily, I look to see what their comfort level is. I want to make sure that they're going to be comfortable. And I don't change my flavor profile depending, I don't change it for who's judging, what area of the country we're cooking in. I tried to find that balanced flavor. And I'm tweaking it, like this year we added spicy white lightning to the mix. But I really don't make changes.
What about for doneness? I've seen judges underneath white tents, black tents, red tents, orange tents. How do you play with blue tents? Yeah. How do you adjust for your doneness for a colored tent, we should say?
Well, I think the SCA is doing a good job educating promoters, so we don't have all these crazy color tents. But when it happens, it's going to happen for everyone. For all the competitors, so we'll be even. I kind of take a look at, again, if it's really dark, am I going to go a little under? Am I going to go a little over natural light? Also too, is when you're practicing at home, cut your steak, take it into different lights and see what does it look like in natural sunlight versus, in a pavilion that's shadowed or, under a red tent.
It's a great tip.
That's a good part. Yeah, that's a good tip. I like that one.
Yep.
Take it to your car for some reason.
It has blue, it has tint, it has tint on your windows, it makes sense.
But there is an SCA rule. You can't, at a comp, take your practice steak into the judging area to check the lighting. You can check the lighting like at a cook's meeting, but you can't take your practice steak and check it in lighting.
Did you know I just thought about that though? That's kind of a cool, you can't do that, but you can mimic it, like in the St. George one we just did, there was an orange tent. Maybe there's an orange tent person around, maybe you can literally go over, take a practice steak and look under and say, oh, okay.
Maybe that's a money making opportunity for us, Rusty, so we can fund the podcast. We'll just have every color tent. We'll charge people $5 to go underneath that tent to check their steaks.
We'll mimic the tent of the judgings.
Yeah, there you go. Then we can buy some better equipment.
$20 to come in and check your steak doneness.
Yep.
Along with your test tubes for your pins.
Yes.
It's over, man.
We're gonna be rich
right now.
We're gonna be rich.
Can I be your spokesperson?
There you go. Exactly. There you go. You're hired, Sandy. You're hired. So I love that. That was great. A lot of stuff there that I'm definitely going to consider next time I go to a SCA, because those are things that I always wonder about, and they're always kind of things you can't control, especially, the judges and stuff. But, putting your best steak forward is just always the best thing you can do. Period.
Absolutely. Yes. And I mean, I've now cooked, almost 200 events, not quite. And I still have a lot to learn with steak, and I'm still practicing and things like that. But I can now start looking at other factors, right? So, as a new competitor, all these things we just said about tent colors and things like that, don't worry about those. Focus on your steak. Like, just try to do the best steak possible. When you start doing more and more and you're like, okay, I got a process, I feel comfortable with that process is repeatable, then you could start looking at the other factors.
And like you said, everyone's in the same boat. We all cook the steak we know. We're all in the blue tent. It's all going to look the same. So
exactly,
we're all going down to the ship. But then there's that guy that overcooked and he wins. He's like, what? You never know. But so let's talk about like kind of disaster situations. You talked about cooking at 17 below degree weather and I saw a picture on your Facebook page where your eyelash froze. What are some times you had where something went really wrong, and how did you pull out of it, and how did you do in that contest?
We all have disasters and things that happen. It's usually a little bit of yelling, and then you hope that you have someone next to you that could calm you down and say, okay, just breathe. We got this. I'll actually give you an example from my husband. In December, we were cooking in Texas, and the steak was, I want to say, probably, they were really thick. They were like 2-inch steaks almost. He cooked it. He had it on the riser. It was taking forever. And he realized it was starting to almost scorch how it was sitting on the riser. And he's like, I can't turn this in. And it was 16 after, like, the turn-in was from 3 to 3:30. It was like 3:16, and he panics. And the thing was, it was a triple, and this was at the second event. And I'm like, well, I'm going on with my steak, and he was like, what? I'm just go. He found his steak for that third time. For that third, Jeff Jacobson was there, got next to him, and it was just like, you know what? Disaster happened. Plan B. I'm going to grab my next steak, put it on. He actually turned in. They were waiting for him, and I believe that's the one he won.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen people that their tents have blown over, right before they were going to put their steak on, and their grills went down. And the people who, I would say, you got to let it out, yell, scream. take a deep breath though. The SCA family will come around you, help you out. You know, like I saw it in Tulsa, they were holding down the tent, got his grow up. And again, that guy I think he got like 5th and the hand-me-down golden ticket that time.
Wow, cool.
Wow. You just need a disaster to happen, and that's how you win. Got it.
You know what's funny? I noticed this, and I was cooking down in Simi Valley, California 2 weeks ago with some people, and you know, they're sort of they've cooked before, but not a lot. The wind was blowing, and of course, it always blew when you're seasoning your steak, right?
Mm-hmm.
It only blew when you're trying to get everything off and get ready to go. You know, your ThermoWorks products are flying all over the place, breaking. We both lost our time stacks. And I noticed that it's a thing in competition food where the wind only blows at the worst times possible. And it's always right before you're about to need that box to stay put.
Right.
Or you're going to need that rub to go on perfectly instead of 5 feet the other direction. You know, that's a thing. That is a real thing. I'm no scientist, but I'm sure there's a scientific reason for that.
Oh, I agree. It would be like, it hasn't been windy all day. And you're like, all right, time to put the steaks on. And this wind comes and you're cooking and holding on to your tent at the same time.
Yeah, it was funny because I'm like, the wind was blowing and it stopped. Like, oh, the wind stopped. I go, it's going to pick up right when we get ready to go. And then we had this whole thing about it. Sure enough. So I get on the Marco Polo and I get my barbecue team. I said, what's the one thing that happens at every single competition? They both get back, the wind, right when we go to turn in. So yeah, that's the thing.
That is a thing. It must be all the energy that the panic, and it's Mother Earth trying to ground us all, like, relax. But
I think it's the excitement, not the panic.
Yeah,
it's excitement. And it just changes the whole barometric pressure of the earth. And in that moment, the wind starts. That's a good explanation.
There we go.
Okay, we figured it out.
Once again, we're good.
All right, so let's bring it back down to earth. Let's bring it back down to earth. We're coming back down to earth here. So I want to touch on something though. When you're picking out a steak, so there's you do the try hard thing. And you said flat. That kind of stuff. I didn't ever think about that. What are you doing to? Obviously, you want a flat steak because it's going to cook evenly. What are some things you're looking for on that table that really help you feel helps your cook the most?
I look for well marbled steak.
And what's the most important thing, do you think?
Marbling is very important. The size of the spinalis is important. And it's also, like I said, I cook tries. I like cut number 3-4 in a loin. And that's what we call a sandy steak. So you see it on the table like, oh, that's a sandy steak. If there's a particular shape to it, that's what I practice with. And I know how to cook those steaks. Somebody who has more of a full spinalis steak, it's a slightly different cook. The trim is even slightly different. So it's being consistent. So when I'm looking, I don't like draw number 1. I like, chip number 3, 4, 5 in that range. So I could also start looking at the table ahead of time. I don't look too closely because whenever I do, the person in front of me will always take the steak I was eyeing. Oh. So I just kind of look at the table. Are they even cut? And I kind of know what my steak looks like. So when I'm glancing at 50 steaks, I kind of know already what shape I like. It's marbling. It has a lot to do with it.
So you have 30 seconds, which seems like a long time. And especially when your friends, and I'm going to air quote this, friends are yelling at you. The second you walk up there, time, just to rattle you. So you have to work under pressure. So you have 30 seconds. That's not a lot of time. What's the first thing you look for? The very first thing you're looking right down, you're saying, I need this to start.
By the way, I always start at the opposite end of the table. So I always walk straight to the other end and work my way back.
Oh, interesting.
Just because a lot of people, 30 seconds isn't a lot. So people I think start like at that beginning part of the table. So I think maybe at that other end, there might be some better ones out there. I don't know. I always do that. It goes back to being consistent on the type of steak I like to cook. I kind of know what the fat shape looks like in there. And so when I'm looking at a table of 50 steaks, it makes it easier to pare down which ones I want to look closer at. I always flip, always flip your steak. Like, it just, probably my biggest pet peeve is watching somebody who picks a steak and didn't flip it over and look at the other side. You don't know if there's a gash or a weird fat mark, or I don't know, you just always flip them. But I always look, again, even cut, are they level? So, I'm kind of like looking at the sides back and forth of the table, making sure it's level. And consistency, a good color. Steak, I don't want anything that's really pale looking.
So you're looking for like a dark red, light red?
Dark red.
What if there's 40 people and they split it up usually? So let's say you're 20th. And you don't have all that. Is that still what you're looking for, the same process, or does that kind of game change a little bit because you might not get the steak that you're really hoping for? Right.
I might not get a sandy steak. Then I'm looking at, okay, what's the best steak that's left at that table? Which one has a nice size spinalis, which has marbling in there.
And Brett doesn't take bribes, by the way, to take anything out of the boxes. I've tried. So, and he kept I said, hey, my friend Benjamin Franklin is really interested to see what is in that box. And I put it in his shirt pocket, and he kept it and did not put any steaks out for me. So just so you know, he will take the bribe, but he won't actually do what you bribed him for.
So I have a question for actually both of you. I guess it doesn't matter. This is questions for the new guy that's coming into SCA, because she mentioned she likes to take the third cut. Can we talk about how many cuts a prime or roast has, and how do you identify what cut number it is throughout the whole slicing process of the ribeyes? Either one of you, it don't matter.
Oh, you're talking about like how many steaks?
Yeah, exactly. And then like she said, she likes steak number 3. How does she know it's steak number 3? How do we identify this for a new person coming into it?
No, forgive me if I'm wrong. I want to say there's 8-ish.
You could get anywhere between actually 12 to 15. It depends on the size of the loin. And if you're cutting it, I'm going to say for SCA competition, right? It's 1 1/8 inches. Now at home, I might cut, 2 inches, and then I'm going to get less out of a loin. We just purchased a loin over the weekend to practice, and I think we got 14. Now, not all of them had great spinalis. From the chuck end, it's going to be more tender, and that is where I start with slice 1 and work my way up. When you get to slice 14 and 15, hardly any spinalis, and not as tender. So there's a couple of, we have it actually on our Facebook page. We took a loin, sliced it, put it out. And so you could kind of reference and start looking at it. Mark Lambert from Sweet Swine of Mine did a great YouTube video, took a loin, sliced it, put them all out there, and really explain the differences between each slice. You'll see the tri-heart muscle starting large at the loin end and getting smaller and totally disappearing. And so you'll start looking at that. And I take note of the fat shape. It starts to change. And that was something that a light bulb went off kind of halfway through the season this year. Oh, this is what the fat typically looks like in the steak, that I like to cook that tri. So again, makes it easier when I'm looking at a table of 50 steaks, which one to pick out.
Interesting. That's a really good tip. I want to watch that video because that's cool to see how they kind of that flows through the whole loin.
Yes.
And you talked about getting a whole loin. A lot of people do that because it's cheaper if you want to practice instead of going and buying the cut slice, like the cut ribeye already. You got a whole loin and you cut it yourself.
Right.
That way you can adjust all sorts of things instead of just getting what the butcher has and available to you. It's cheaper, and you get more selection. You can pick and choose which steaks. Because I like to do a really good one. Like today, I practiced a really nice steak, and then I practiced a really crappy one. So I like to do those side by side all the time. And I have that ability when I'm cutting my own loins out because I can match them as I want.
Like I would always say, like, if you're starting out, you could go to your local grocery store and use that meat case as steak selection, right? And go through and pick out your best steaks. But every now and then I would say, just stick your hand in and pull out, whatever steak you have, because there's times that we just talked about, you're number 20 on the table and there aren't great steaks. You're not going to get the perfect steak that you always like to cook. So sometimes you want to cook crappy steaks just so you get that practice, because that happens. And at that, if you have a whole loin, you're having each one of those cuts. So you'll play around with try hard versus, a full spinalis, and then just kind of the loin end.
So let's talk about something that's coming up in the SCA world. It's coming on strong. We need your help. The sear revolution. Are you interested in searing a steak ever?
Oh, here we go.
Probably not for competition. I like to eat a seared steak. I don't think I'll do one for competition. I like consistency and things I know. I know my process right now. It would take a while for me, I think, to do a seared and put it into competition, but I think it's great that it's happening. I like the taste of the seared steak. So I think we're going to see more of it.
So you're not joining Team Rusty?
I will. And I have, like I said, that same deal with bread. I got some money. If we wanted, you want to talk about it, maybe I can bribe you to do it. But that's just down the road. We'll talk about that later. But if you ever consider it, let me know. Joining the revolution. It's gonna be fun. Speaking of classes, I don't know why I said that. Speaking of classes, because we weren't speaking of classes.
No,
but
we know where you're.
There's a class
Speaking
for
of
searing.
classes, everyone. Speaking of rain, you do classes with Johnny Joesph. How did that connection? Could it happen? Johnny. You and Johnny, obviously, that's a kind of a powerhouse. You, Tim, and Johnny together doing classes. That's kind of crazy. How did that come together?
It came together. I would say the first time I met Johnny was in 2018, and he was just Johnny Joesph, like the myth. Here's this guy in this bright green shirt. And at that Worlds, he got the Legend Award. So he became the myth and then the legend, and started talking online at Worlds that year. And he kind of asked to look at my steak, and I showed him my steak, and he just kind of shook his head and he's like, "Good luck, darling." Didn't say anything about the steak. I'm like, okay. And we met him then at World Food a couple weeks later, and he said he was going to retire and start to do classes. I'm like, tell me where your class is. We are going to come to your first class. So that December, my husband and I flew to Houston, and we took his very first class. And he really became a mentor to us. So he started off as the myth, the legend, the mentor, and now he's one of our dearest friends, and super supportive through there. And I kind of joke around, I'm student to champion with the Johnny Joesph School.
I like that.
Well, speaking of legends, though, I got to be honest, Sandy. I don't know if he mentioned this because we did talk to Johnny Joesph on this podcast. I don't know if he mentioned on air or not, but he was talking a lot about you. But I first heard about you from Travis McGee.
Okay.
We were cooking down there, and he's like, "Man, you got to watch out for the Sandy chick. She's like crushing right now. It's this and this and this. You need to see what she's doing and stuff." So, Johnny's a legend too, but you're kind of developing your own legendary status as well. Because there's everyone's was talking about Sandy. This is before 2020. Well, with Travis. So that's, it's pretty cool. So now you're cooking with Johnny along with him, and you have a bunch of classes coming up. You have you have one in Tulsa, and they're 2-day events. So how does that work? August 17th and 18th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What do you go through? Why is it a 2-day event?
It's actually a 1-day event, and that's April.
Did I say something else?
You said August.
You have
wow.
You're terrible at dates.
I said August. August is see, I have this written down in front of me, everyone that's not listening. That is listening and not watching. It's all written in front of me, and not one thing says August. Not one thing. No. There's not an August on here. Okay, so April 17th,
so April
18th,
17th and 18th. So it's a 1-day class, but we're holding 2 different classes: a class on Saturday and a class on Sunday. And so actually, we were going to start teaching with Johnny last year. Last March, we were going to do a class in Downers Grove, Illinois, and COVID hit. And so it didn't happen. And then we started competing a whole lot and didn't really have time to teach, but I've always had a passion to teach. And so this year we decided that we wanted to teach, and definitely going to team up with Johnny. Johnny really taught us a foundation of cooking, and that's really what we want to give people in our classes. It's Johnny, my husband Tim, and myself. So we said it's kind of 3 different takes, but our foundations are the same, but we all have little tweaks of how we do things. So in the class, it's a live class with all 3 of us, and we take you through prepping, what you should do before you get to a comp, what you need to do before steak selection. We take you through steak selection, trimming, seasoning, fire management, cooking. You know, we cook on an M16. Johnny cooks on a PK. We just did a class, actually 2 classes down in Florida. We had both grills going. And so we'll kind of cook a steak and show people, and then we ask for volunteers and other people. We put them on the grill to cook, and we tasted, and we kind of did a little taste off. So very hands-on, lots of questions. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, it's we have our spring, what we're calling our spring schedule out. It's Downers Grove in March. Then we go to Tulsa for 2 days. We go to Liberty, Texas, and Liberty, Texas, we're just doing 1 class on Saturday. And then we're actually teaching a kids class on Sunday, Kids Q Nation, which is going to be a lot of fun. It's for the Gene Potts Get Kids Cooking, I think is the official name of that. So we're super excited about that. And then we're going to be in Alabama, June 11th.
Oh, as Alabama.
Yep.
Are those tell-all classes? Are they complete tell-all classes, or you guys just get basic outlines?
We go through a good foundation, and Johnny gives his recipe. We give our recipe. You know, we try to tell as much as we can. But really what we want to do is give everybody a foundation and understanding why they're doing something. I used to work for a software company as a technical trainer. So I love training. I love going to classes, and we went to tons of barbecue classes. And if you go to a class and you try to do exactly what that other person did, your results might not be the same because you just have some minor differences. So we really just wanted to give people a foundation and an understanding of what's happening, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what to look for, like steak selection. I'm not going to tell you which steak to pick because everybody's a little bit different. We talk in general about flavor profiles or fire management. I want people to start thinking, how do they make it their own?
That's awesome. And that's what's cool is because you can take a profile and copy it, but it's like you said, it's not the same even if you taste it. And it's very, very beneficial to learn the processes and the whys. And a lot of people, they forget the whys and they just talk about their process, you know? Right. And so I think that's very valuable to have because then you can take that home and really make it your own. And I think that's what's really important. That's what takes good cooks to great cooks is when they're able to understand why and develop their own flavor profile, their own techniques, and that kind of takes them to the next level because you're not going to get anywhere doing what everyone else is doing.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I think, and then you're able to taste the steaks too, and to taste yours, Tim's, and Johnny's. I want to go just for that. I was for the class, but I'm just like, when's the steak gone?
Right.
See, do this.
Like the 3 best steaks in the nation, all in one spot.
Right. So, and then real quick though, one last question before we let you go. M Grill. So an M16, a lot of people want to get one. They're one of the more expensive cookers out there. But in my opinion, they're probably the best all-around cooker. Explain what makes the M16, you know, I'm not gonna say better than the rest, but what is it that you love about it?
There's so many things. Handcrafted. They're handcrafted in Texas. I always say with my steaks, I put a little love in it, made with love. That's actually like my logo on my shirt, on my hat. But and Travis's, they put the soul into it, right? So they're handcrafted. They're well made. They're built like a tank. They're gonna last. But just the thought process of the design, how they're being made, the 4 air intakes, outtakes, you have a lot more control over airflow, temps. Yes, it's more expensive, but it's worth it, and it's going to be a grill you're going to have for a lifetime.
And I can attest that I've actually I went to cook on M grills, Big M specifically, which I would love to have a Big M. It's a barbecue smoker. So it's not the M16, but the way that Travis and his team work, it's really cool to see. And it's literally everything is handmade,
Yes.
touched by a human, and really well thought out. I mean, he's a smart guy. He comes from a family of fabricators, and he's basically grew up in it and knows everything about how to make these things. And he's really creative and really knows the system. And I've had friends cook on these, and they're just great. So yes, a little bit more expensive, but like you said, that thing's going to get you through everything. You know, like you said, 17 below degree weather, you probably cooked fantastically on the F16, you know, because it's, you know, it's like you can go cook in the hot of summer and the cold of winter, and it's all the same. Where if you have another cooker that's not as tanky, as you say, you know, you're gonna have a lot of swings in temperature. It's gonna be harder to control.
Yes, yes.
I lifted my lid on the first one this weekend. I did not realize I needed a back brace to lift the lid. It was heavy. I was really surprised on how heavy the lid itself was in there. So it is a tank when you mean it's a tank.
I name all my grills. So my M16 name is Tex, because he's from Texas. And while I'm cooking, I give Tex a little pep talk every now and then. So when it was below 17, I had to give him a little pep talk that, yeah, it was cold, but he could handle it.
You can do it. Go. Well, Sandy, we do appreciate you taking time out to hang out with us. And we really love what you're doing for SCA cooking. I know a lot of women coming up can look up to you and see that it, you know, it can be done by anybody. Obviously, It's not a sexist thing. It's not anything like that. But it's really cool to see you coming out on top, doing as well as you have to inspire others. And really hope to meet you on the trail one day, and you know, maybe get my butt kicked, but maybe taste a good steak, or come out to a class or something. But
come out to a class. We are thinking of heading out to the West Coast for a class or two. So
we're there 100%. I'm not even joking. If you come out to the West Coast, take my money. I'm coming. I don't care. We're gonna go.
He wants to get on the layaway program. So when you do that, it's already paid for.
That's right. There you go. All right. Well, hey, we appreciate the time you took with us, and you have a good one, and hopefully we can talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye-bye.